to do what?
What's up, beautiful people and lovers of all things women's basketball? Welcome back to the Protect Our Queens podcast presented by the Give Us a Shot Network. With me, as always, my brother in Christ, my partner in crime, Martin Sories. How are we feeling today, man?
Good to be back. Great to be back. Another Tuesday night. Another great time to be here on the Protect Our Queens podcast. If you don't like women's basketball, this ain't the place for you. And much love to people who have been here tapping in with us during this incredible time in women's basketball history. So yeah, good to be here. How you feeling, man?
I'm feeling pretty good. Did you enjoy the week off? I know you were out of town for work things, but
I was right. Yeah, technically I got back Tuesday earlier than I thought, so I could have bum rushed a show into I could have whipped a show into shape, but no, just a couple quick days out, and yeah, there's a lot going on, man. A lot going on. We got a few pressing kind of things, interesting things to get to tonight. What are we talking about tonight?
Well, before we start and before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show, we're going to talk a little bit about the reaction to A'ja Wilson's logo, which I feel like at this point we learned that people care about things that they really shouldn't care about all the time. We've also I got a little spiel on the Mystics because I was able to go to the Mystics game last week against the Sun. So just kind of want to get some thoughts on that. We're also going to talk about who the best team in the WNBA at this point, because I know we're a couple weeks removed from the tiers, but I feel like things have changed a bit since we did the tiers a couple weeks ago. And then, of course, we have to weigh in on the Rookie of the Year debate. Is it Angel? Is it Caitlin? We're going to talk about that later on tonight. But first, Martin Sories, A'ja Wilson, her logo was revealed last week, and there was a lot of mixed reaction to it. A lot more mixed reaction than I think is required for a logo reveal, my guy.
Yeah, no, I was a little surprised at how much people felt like it just wasn't good. Just I again, all of these marketing and branding experts all of a sudden popping up all out of the woodwork on the internet. I thought the logo was fine. I saw the logo, and I'm not a logo expert or anything, but I saw the explanation and the breakdown of it and how they came to it, and that helped me to understand the logo a little better, of course. But yeah, and then I sent you a tweet from Nikias Duncan, who tweeted like an experience where he had on the A'ja logo shirt and he was at a hotel or something. I can't remember. I sent you the tweet, but he said someone came up to him and like the logo stuck out to them and they asked him like, "Oh, what is that?" So obviously small sample size, some random person wherever he was at, but clearly it and that's what a good logo is, what people say it's supposed to do, is catch the eye, catch your attention, make you wonder what it's about or what it is. So yeah, we're in, people are going to critique and give their takes and opinions, of course, but I do think it's going to be something that grows on people. Like even the more I look at it, I feel like the more I even like it. So I think it's fine. Also, when you think about it, like that's a hard task, man. Like it's tough. I mean, a logo was hard, especially for like a player, and I think maybe subconsciously we think of like the Jumpman logo, like other logos that are associated with a player, so that task in itself, I feel like, is just really challenging, especially for a female player, a player like A'ja. Like you need something that represents her. So I thought it was fine. I think it's fine. I think it's going to grow on people too.
It's a logo. It'll end up on a shoe and a bunch of other stuff. Like, I don't really care all that much. It's why I don't make these decisions. It's a logo. It makes sense when you think about it, right? I mean, you got the Jumpman logo. LeBron has his logo that, it's his initials with a crown on it, right? I mean,
and like, I don't even really associate that. Like, I don't even know the LeBron logo off the top of my head. I don't even think that.
I didn't even see the LeBron logo for the first time until like 2 or 3 years ago. Like, I didn't even know what LeBron's logo was, but it's just an L and a J, but they're elongated and there's like a crown where they touch, but it's like, it's a logo. Like, I mean, if it makes sense to the person whose logo it is, then who cares what other people think? Especially if you're three people on a podcast trolling, or whether you're someone that sees Nikias Duncan wearing a shirt out in public. The only person that matters is the person whose logo it is. So if A'ja Wilson likes it, I love it, and that's really all I've got to say about the logo. It'll be on some shoes, and the shoes will be nice, and probably some other merchandise related things, and people will buy them because it's A'ja Wilson, and it won't even be a conversation anymore. But Martin Sories, enough logo talk. Are you ready to talk about women's basketball?
Let's get into it, man.
Let's have some fun.
Protect our queens.
No matter what it takes, we must protect our queen.
I mean, I just love playing the game. It's fun.
I'm reacting on what the defender does.
I hit them with a hezzy. After that, they quit.
Yeah, I think I've always just been able to get downhill, so I've sort of prided myself on that.
I know what I'm doing. Like, people can't tell me I'm not doing the right. Like, I've been taught the right way.
First things first, tonight I want to talk really quickly about the Washington Mystics, who last week they had two very important games, I would say. They had a game against the Sun that I was fortunate enough to be able to attend, and they also had a game against the Aces this past Saturday that, because it's the Aces, I could not attend, but I got to watch the game. And one thing that I noticed, and Martin, you and I kind of talked about this after the game on Thursday, and then very briefly after the game on Saturday, is despite the fact that the Mystics entered that game on Thursday with half of their roster unavailable for injury for one reason or another one, that game against the Sun, I think, was the best game the Mystics played all season. Maisha Hines-Allen played great at the end of the game, essentially kept the Mystics in a position to win that game. The Mystics had two opportunities at the end of regulation and the end of overtime to win the game. They failed both times. And you and I got into my thoughts on Eric Tebow and how I feel like sometimes he doesn't rise to the occasion as a head coach in those moments to make certain decisions. It was a very physical game. But I will say this about the Washington Mystics. They are the worst team in basketball. They're not the worst team in basketball because they don't have talent. They're the worst team in basketball just because of injury. I certainly think, if Brittany Sykes hasn't missed so much time, if Shakira Austin hasn't missed so much time, that they would be a lot better because they certainly have the talent to be competitive and at least compete for playoff positioning. The one thing, though, that stuck out to me the most is the fluidity of the offense when Ariel Atkins is running the offense, right? And we talked about, I think, a couple months ago after their game against the Storm, which is the first game of the season that I went to, how Ariel Atkins has certainly assumed a lot more of a facilitating kind of role this year because she's had to, because she's they don't really have a true well, they have Julie Van Loo, but Julie Van Loo's a rookie. She's still kind of learning the Mystic system and things of that nature. Ariel Atkins is the longest tenured player on the roster at this point. But the offense runs so smoothly through Ariel Atkins. And sometimes it just makes me wonder, like, why they don't run the offense through her more, just getting her touches, right? We talked a lot during March Madness about, like, getting Camila Cardoso touches and just getting your best player touches in big moments and just in general. And I feel like if there's one thing when we talk about, like, my biggest criticism on Eric Tebow, that would be the one criticism, is sometimes I feel like there's just too many possessions where Ariel Atkins isn't touching the ball in a meaningful manner. And I don't just mean like a quick give and go. Like, I mean, like an actual, like, a meaningful touch, whether it's a touch to score or a touch to pass to score. Like, I feel like she doesn't touch the ball enough, and it kind of forces her to play hero ball a little bit down the stretch of these games when they're behind a lot more than they should be. So I don't know, like the Mystics, I think it's just such a tough thing because we haven't seen them play a game yet at full strength. Like, they played one game, I would say, this season, unfortunately. It was the first game of the season, and it's just been all downhill since then. And in that first game of the season, despite the fact that they lost, they took the New York Liberty to their limits. Like, we know what this team is capable of, and I certainly think over time, if all these players aren't missing time, they would have a lot more wins under their belt. I mean, despite the two losses that they've suffered, they still won 4 of their last 7 games. Like, they were starting to turn the corner a bit and really get things together. So I'm hoping, as the season goes on, especially after the Olympic break, which comes up here in about 2 weeks or so, that they'll be able to really hit the ground running. I think Aaliyah Edwards, not Aaliyah Edwards, sorry. Brittany Sykes and Carly Samuelson, it's already been reported they're not going to be seeing the floor again until at least after the Olympic break, just because of their injuries, to give them that time, which again makes sense. The Mystics aren't competing for anything right now, so there's no need for them to, be playing games right now and potentially risk furthering their current existing injuries. But it just sucks because there's a lot of talent on that roster, and a lot of talent that if they were able to play together cohesively, collectively, more frequently, they could definitely be a lot more competitive than what we've seen them be so far. We've seen flashes, but I do strongly feel like if we got to see them all together healthy more often, they would not be the laughingstock of the WNBA right now at the bottom like that. I definitely think that we would be able to look at them a little bit more in the competitive light that I know that they can be, because we've seen it. We've seen them be able to be competitive.
Only thing I have to throw in my 2 cents, just an interesting stat I saw looking through my stuff for tonight. The Mystics have the highest percentage of their points that come from the three. It's like 36 or 37% of their points come from three. Some of that may be desperation, but I did find that interesting because when you told me when we were talking during that game that you were at and against Vegas, and you were like, they're down 5 or whatever. I'm like, yo, how is the worst team in the league? And then I'm looking at their game log. I'm like, man, they're scoring 80 points at times. Like it's like clearly there's something there.
Stephanie Dawson has been huge for them lately. In that game against the Suns, she was like perfect up until like 1 or 2 shots into the third quarter. And then against the Aces, it was the same thing. She finished the first half 100% from the field, had 14 points. And so she's a big reason why why that 3-point percentage for them as far as points is so high, because she has stretched the floor for them. And she's been great for them. I will say to that as well. And I don't really think that that's the game plan going in when you bring in a player the caliber of Stephanie Dawson, is for her to stretch the floor the way that she has. Obviously, we know that she can stretch the floor, but she, I think, has been probably their best 3-point shooter this season, if not one of their best, because she's just getting those looks and she's making them. There is a little bit of desperation because they've been down big in some of these games. And so, we know how basketball works. Sometimes we just chuck up threes and hope for the best. But Stephanie Dawson's been huge. I think these 2 games that she's played, those last 2 games of the season last week back to back, were I'd say the 2 best games she's played all season. She's certainly been their best player in both of those 2 games. Again, I just really wish that we could see Ariel Atkins touch the ball more in a facilitating capacity. It doesn't have to be all the time. I'm not saying we have to make her, we need to, she's to bring the ball to the floor every single possession. But I do think that your best player should have a meaningful touch in every possession, whether it's looking to score or passing to assist, whatever the case may be, because Ariel Atkins draws a lot more attention than I think we want to give her credit for. And I understand there's a lot of things that you're trying to figure out. You want to get Julie Van Loo comfortable because she's your point guard. You want to get others comfortable as well. But Ariel Atkins, when she has the ball in her hands, makes things happen for the Mystics, whether it's hitting a shot, getting an assist, or, drawing fouls, whatever it is. I think that she should touch the ball more on these possessions. So, health, it's the big thing. Injuries is always the biggest killer when it comes to these teams, right? PG's in Philly now, and the one thing everyone's saying is, but if Joel Embiid's not healthy, it doesn't matter. I feel like that's just the one issue, is that they've been riddled with injury all season, and it's unfortunate. But all things considered, I do still think they're turning the corner. Coach was asked at the end, there's no more victories in sports, but there's anything you take away from the game, what would it be? And he just said, we definitely have things working. He just really wishes that we could have all of his players could be available. And I agree. If all the players are available, I think they are a lot more competitive. They're turning the corner. It looked like they were turning the corner, and then things just kind of fell apart. But that's kind of what happens when you lose 2 of your best players to free agency and all that good stuff. That's just how it goes.
I will say too, Stephanie Dawson she's probably one of the more underrated players in the league. Honestly, she's a flat out hooper. If you get to watch Stephanie Dawson play, you see good basketball. You see a big that can stretch the floor. You also see a very good passer. She just has a good feel for the game of basketball. Always has never really ascended to a star at this level. But every team she's been on, anytime you see her hoop, you see good basketball. She can shoot it, knows how to use her body. She's got a big frame that she knows how to use. And like we said, she can stretch the floor. Really just good basketball player, flat out hooper. I've always enjoyed watching Stephanie Dawson play, and she has gotten better as a pro. Super solid, super fundamental, super skilled. And I don't think her skill gets talked about enough.
Yeah, they have a game tonight against the Sparks, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Two teams that are kind of in similar positioning. Obviously, the Sparks are the better team. Let's move on because I mentioned two teams now, the Sun and the Aces, more so the Sun than the Aces, that are expected to be at this point kind of the cream of the crop. And I alluded to earlier, a couple weeks ago when I did the tiers, I had the Sun comfortably at the top and I said they were the queens of the court. Since that day, though, they lost, I think, 2 or 3 straight. And I believe before the win against the Mystics, they were on the verge of losing another one. They've since turned it around. They've strung a couple of wins in a row. But you've got the Sun, you have the Liberty, who you called out Sabrina Ionescu at the beginning of the season, and she has, I would say, answered the call so far. Just earlier today was announced that she was the WNBA Eastern Conference Player of the Month. We talked about Jonquel Jones a bit offline. I'm sure we'll get into her again. And then, of course, you have Nafisa Collier and the Minnesota Lynx, who you and I have talked a lot about both on and off the show. Martin Torres, as it stands right now, who would you say the best team in the WNBA is?
Well, the best team right now is still Vegas to me. They just got Chelsea Gray back. Their big four is still the big championship four. They're still the best team until otherwise. And they just got back fully healthy. And so even looking at them with Chelsea, like they're coming back into form. I told you, I don't think we're going to see the real aces really until the postseason. I do think they're going to look to kick up and obviously establish themselves towards the end of the regular season. But I don't think we'll even see their best form until the postseason. But the team that's playing the best basketball is a different question. And I think that's between New York and Minnesota right now. You're right. Things have changed a little bit since the last time you did your tiers. And I thought it was fair to have Connecticut at the top. I did push back a little and said I felt like Minnesota may deserve a spot up or be at the top with them at the time. But right as it stands now, I think New York and Minnesota, the two teams who played in the Commissioner's Cup, Minnesota won, obviously. I think those are the two best teams playing the best basketball right now. And even if you look in the major statistical categories, New York and Minnesota are all over the top 5 in most of the major stat categories. And Minnesota actually beats them out in a couple of them. And it's interesting when you look at where they are, because New York is number 1 in 3-point makes, but Minnesota's top 5 in 3-point makes. Minnesota's number 1 in 3-point percentage. Minnesota's top 5 in points, rebounds, assists, blocks, steals, field goal percentage. New York, pretty much all the same except for blocks. I mean, New York's top 5 points, rebounds, assists, steals, field goal percentage, 3-point makes, 3-point percentage. They're number 1 in free throw percentage. So you just look at the major stat categories for teams right now. It's New York and Minnesota all over the top 5, and they're the common denominators, the only two teams that are really all over the place in top 5 of the stat categories. And I think those are the two best teams right now. I think they're the two teams playing the best basketball. I think New York, even though, listen, Minnesota has proven they beat them in the Commissioner's Cup game. And it's one game. But Minnesota is showing, and like I briefly said, I think on our last show at one point when I was talking about Kayla McBride, Minnesota just has good, sound, smart players at every position, surrounded by their best player who does everything in Nafisa Collier. So really interesting matchup. I think I'd give New York the slight edge talent-wise. But again, in terms of basketball, Minnesota beat them in the Commissioner's Cup. Minnesota's proving they're just as good as, if not better than anybody else.
I would agree that Minnesota and New York are certainly playing the best basketball right now. I know that New York right now, I think they're sitting at the top of the standings overall. I think they're leading with 16 wins right now. But Connecticut has 15 and like Minnesota has 14. And I think right under them is the Storm, who shout out to the Storm, who have started to get things together. They've also started to gel and started to hit their shot as well. They're up to 13 wins as well. And then the Aces are the 5th team and the only other team in the WNBA that has 10 wins. They're at 10 on the dot. I would say, considering what the expectations were coming into the season and considering how vastly different this team looks at this point in the season compared to how they looked at this point last season, I would say that New York's the best team in basketball right now in the WNBA. I think And there's two big reasons. The first one is a point that you mentioned at the beginning of the season when we did our preview show. It's Sabrina Ionescu. She's actually playing like she's the third, sometimes second best player on this team, whereas for much of the season last season, and especially in that final series against the Aces, that was a question. Like there was like it wasn't 100% clear that Sabrina was a part of that big three. It looked more so like Betnijah Laney was a part of that big three at times instead of Sabrina. Sabrina stepped up humongously this season. The other thing too, it's been Jonquel Jones, and you and I talked a bit. We were talking about like the MVP race because it's interesting how we always change the definition of like what an MVP is from time to time. And I said on the show a couple weeks ago that just because of how great she's playing, it's going to take a historical season for anyone to legitimately compete with A'ja Wilson as an MVP candidate. And despite the fact that they're fifth in the standings, I don't think there's anyone that would disagree that right now, if voting is happening right now and the season's over today, A'ja Wilson is the MVP of the WNBA, despite the fact that they're the fifth seed. But Jonquel Jones has been playing at an MVP caliber level this season. And I would go as far as to say that so far this season, she's actually been the best player on the team. And I know that Stewie's been great this season. Again, Sabrina's been great as well. But the big key for the Liberty last season, coming out of the All-Star break, what gave them that push to the finals and made that series a lot more interesting than we may have originally thought going into the season, or even going into that, as the season progressed, is she got comfortable. It took half the season for her to get comfortable, but she got comfortable and she became the X factor on both ends of the ball. She's been that so far this season as well. And I think that's what's been the difference. It's not just Stewie dropping 40 balls left and right with the occasional Jonquel, 15, 20-point game, the occasional Sabrina 15, 20-point game. It's been a lot more fluid in how the scoring is coming from. And that's what makes this team so dynamic. That's what makes this team so hard to stop. That's what made this team the best team in the WNBA, have the best record in the WNBA post All-Star break last season, because Jonquel Jones got comfortable. When I look at the Minnesota Lynx, I think that they're right there. The only thing about the Lynx that just gives that makes me give the edge to the Liberty is that the Liberty are playing for a little bit more this season, I think. And I think that you can tell by the way they're playing basketball, right? I think it's undeniable, number one, that the Liberty realized that they missed an opportunity at the end of the season in that finals to win that game 4. Because despite the fact that I'm a fan of the Aces, I have no problem admitting, if the Liberty win game 4 with Kia Stokes and Chelsea Gray being out, I understand that A'ja Wilson's the best player on the planet. And I said when we had Lauren on the show that I thought that game had all the makings for an A'ja Wilson legacy game. I don't know if the Liberty go back to the Aces in Vegas in game 5 and lose that game if they win game 4. And I think that was a big reality check for them, is that things needed to be different, and they needed to come out to this season and be a lot more aggressive than they were, and things needed to change stylistically. And I think they've done that. Like, this team doesn't feel the same. I know they've missed Courtney Vandersloot for a bit here and there because she's been dealing with some personal things.
But they've looked
without her, great, and they've arguably looked better without her. So it'll be interesting to see what they look like when she comes back. I think right now, the New York Liberty, they're playing with vengeance on their mind. They want to get back to the finals. They want to right that wrong. I think the other thing, too, is, and I don't want to give too much credit or too much bulletin board material, because I think that sometimes it's applicable, sometimes it's not. I do think, and we talked about it on the show, there was a lot of validity to what Kelsey Plum said last season about the Liberty and other teams around the league, about how, specifically the Liberty, they weren't really a team. They were just players kind of put together in the moment. You can't make that assessment and you can't make that statement right now based on how they're looking. Like, they look like a much more cohesive unit. Like, it looks like they went out and we saw them, go out and spending time together in the offseason, getting to know each other a bit better. So I would say, because of the motivation and just because right now this season, this team right now looks so much better than the way that this team looked at this point of the season last season, approaching All-Star break. I would say that the Liberty are the best team in the WNBA. And it's not just because of the record. It's because they just look like they figured out, they have a formula that works for them. And it has a lot to do with, as I mentioned, Sabrina stepping up and Jonquel Jones stepping up. Not that they were absent last season, but they're more consistently playing at the level that we expect them to play at. So Stewie doesn't have to go out there and be Superwoman every night on the floor. And I think that's going to be the big difference as they continue to roll on throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, I think to touch on Sabrina, what I have been seeing and noticing is, it is, you're right. She's doing kind of the stuff that I was saying, like, don't just be a 3-point shooter. Show us that you are forget your team. Show you're one of the better guards in the league, which right now she's playing like one of the top guards in the league. And that has nothing to do with her 3-point shooting. We know you got that already, sis. Yep. What I'm seeing when I watch Sabrina is better pace. She's putting people in jail on her hit more. She's playing in between in the in not even just mid-range, but just keeping her dribble, fending people off, and looking for openings to get to the basket, to get late. I see her getting cleaner looks, getting to the basket. I see a little more pop. Of course, no one's going to accuse her of being some twitchy, great explosive athlete, but I am seeing a little more pop to her first step and to her movement. And just a little more mastering of her pace. But I see her pace. She probably did a little. I look forward to finding out, and I'm going to look into seeing like what kind of work she was doing in the off season, because I could tell she was working on her agility, quickness, and I can tell the difference. So those are just some of the things watching Sabrina in terms of what is making her look a little different. Because it's like if you look at her numbers, it's probably not that different. Right. Like the one number I think is probably going to look different is her threes. Like she's probably shot some more. She probably shot more. I should have checked myself, but she probably shot more threes last season. Probably is going to finish the season last year, probably making more threes than she will this season, because I just think her commitment to playing in between the lines is becoming obvious, and it's making her look like a more well-rounded guard right now.
Yeah, I would say I just pulled up the numbers just to check. Right now, she's averaging just about 19 points per game, 42% from the field, which is on par with last season. Her three-point shooting is down a bit. She was at 45% last year. She's at 36% this year. But the stat that pops out to me, and I don't know if it's because Sloot's been gone or if it's because of all those things that you mentioned about her adjusting her game, or it's a combination of both. She's averaging just about seven assists so far this season per game, which is a career high for her. So she's not only becoming a lot more effective with the ball in her hands from a scoring component, she's also doing a much better job of moving the ball around and finding open shooters and getting them involved as well, which is also very important, because if we tie it back to the series against the Aces, that was the one issue, is that they weren't moving the ball around. Like the ball was just stopping from time to time. There's a lot more fluidity of motion. A lot of the fact that Sabrina has been passing the ball a lot more this season as well. So I look at this team,
off the bounce playmaking, like Kelsey Plum, Jackie Young, Chelsea Gray. These are guards that score, that make plays, that do things off the bounce, and the Liberty guards were not countering that at all last season.
Yeah. Last thing I do want to action, because I did I very briefly touched on them, because they have started to get it together. Seems like they've hit their stride, and I mentioned they're 13-6 now. The Seattle Storm was one of those teams at the in the offseason we touched on very briefly, like, look out for them, because they've got their new big three with Skylar and Jewel and NECA, obviously, and I'll always show love to Ezzy. I believe she's still leading the league in blocks per game at this point. She's been great defensively, which is something I alluded to when the move was made. Where do you think the Storm slots into all this? Like, do you think the Storm has the potential to be looked at as one of the best, maybe not the best, but like, can they hit that championship ceiling and actually legitimately be in that conversation with the Liberty and the Aces, as we assume that Chelsea Gray will help them get there, and then maybe the Sun and the Lynx as well? Do you think that this is just kind of like we'll see how it goes? Because I feel like this is the perfect time for them, because they're starting to get it together. It's going to suck that they're going to be not playing together for like 3 weeks because the Olympic break / the All-Star break, but I think they're hitting their stride at the right time. And I don't know, I feel like maybe we could be looking at the Storm in a similar light to how we looked at the Liberty last year, where post All-Star break, they come back and they hit the ground running. Maybe not all the way to a finals appearance, but they hit the ground running and things really start clicking and gelling for them.
Yeah, Seattle should be anyone's dark horse. Like that's the team. You're not going to want to see them in a playoff series, right? Like like you said, they may not shake out as one of the top 3 or 4 teams, but like rankings wise, but they're right there. We know who they have. Not just stars and talented players, but veteran stars and talented players. So I think they may be like, the league is going to get so crazy over the next few years. Like every team is going to start to really load up. I think Seattle may have their like Liberty moment next year. Like it may be a year 2 thing where it really starts to come together. But they're formidable. Like you said, they are putting it together right now. I do think like they're a dark horse for they could make an argument for best team in the league. I'm glad you brought them up. Like based on what they put out there on the floor, they could certainly make that argument. But I think just, even roster wise, like I think they could use a Benaja Laney. I don't think they have necessarily a player like that. I'm still watching to see what Jordan Horston. I was really looking for her to kind of step up into that wing role as all those other spots were going to be filled. I'm also looking to, Seattle has a big four. Like, we're both high on Ezzy. Like, Ezzy should make them a legitimate big four. And that's, them and I've said, like, Seattle and Phoenix, both of them they could be a dark horse against anybody.
Just taking a look, I mean, we talked earlier about how the Liberty and the Lynx are all over everything. The Sky are in the top 5 of just about everything as well. They're in the top 5 of points per game. They're at 84. That's third, only behind the Liberty and the Aces. They're second in rebounds per game, only behind the Sky. They're top 5 in assists per game. They're top 2 in blocks per game. They lead the league in steals per game. Like, they're also all over those major statistical categories and affecting games in a lot of different ways. And I think that is a team that, and you're right, this could be a year 2 thing for them, where this year is just kind of the year where they're kind of figuring it out. They'll hit their stride, maybe make a run in the next year's year. We look at the Storm and say, watch out, they're a legitimate contender. But I watched the Seattle Storm play the Indiana Fever the other day, and I would say that up to that point in the season, I don't think that team looked as great, as sound, and as fluid as they did that night. Like, that was I think that was the best game they played all season. Ezzy Magbagor continues to just change the game on the defensive side of the ball from a shot blocking standpoint, which is, if you remember, what I expected to happen when they got NECA, was for her to have a little bit more free range of motion on the defensive side of the ball. I think Skylar Diggins-Smith especially is really starting to get into the groove of things as well. She's been playing a lot better, a lot more true to form at this point. And, we know what to expect from Jewel Lloyd on a nightly basis. So I agree. Like, I don't think anyone's 100% expecting them to come out of either side of the playoff bracket and have a finals appearance, but I also don't think anyone would bat an eye or be shocked if we get to September, October, and we're looking up in the Seattle Storm, one of the 2 teams competing for a championship this season, because they have the talent there. They have the pieces, and they have the coach in Noel Quinn who can get it done. And I feel like sometimes we don't talk about Noel Quinn enough. So let me just show her some love right there as well, and just say that I think that if there's anyone that can kind of massage this roster to where they need to be to legitimately compete for that championship spot, or a championship spot, it would certainly be Noel Quinn. Let's toss it now super quickly to a clip of Monica McNutt from First Take after the Indiana Fever and the Chicago Sky played their final game against each other this season last Sunday, and then we will talk about Rookie of the Year.
I think it's imperative that we point out exactly what you said. This race is not a far-gone conclusion. And I think coming into this season, Caitlin Clark had the best odds per Vegas to win the award, right? My whole thing coming into this was which one of these rookies, or any rookie, should the race be opened up to dark horse contenders, is going to have the greatest impact on winning. Yesterday on our terrific countdown show, produced by Demetrius Harris, hosted by LaChina Robinson, with my girl Carolyn Peck. We love Demetrius. Yesterday, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, my answer was Caitlin, because at the time, Indiana held that 8th seed. Now there's a little bit of detail here. Indiana has played 18 games. Chicago has played 15 games. After last night's contest, or yesterday afternoon's contest, it flips. You would have the Sky in the playoffs right now, which means that Angel Reese, in theory, has impacted winning in a greater way. But I think the double-double streak that she's on, the 8 consecutive double-doubles, for Caitlin, she's leading rookies in points, minutes, and assists. There was terrific stats put out over the weekend by our colleague Michael Vopel about the percentage, about her being the player that has seen the most blitzes in the league. And so she's navigating a different level of defensive intensity, and rightfully so, because she's playing a point guard role for this Fever squad. So I think today, looking at the standings, you probably tend to lean Angel just a little bit, but Caitlin's numbers are fantastic. And I just think this thing is going to be a lot tighter than most folks thought it might have been.
Just a little bit of additional context, because that clip at this point is just about a week old. As it stands right now, the Indiana Fever have played 20 games. They're 8-12, and the Chicago Sky are currently playing right now against the Dream. That game's obviously not to be decided. So as it stands right now, they've played 17 games. They're 6-11. They hold it 8 and 9 spots respectively. Martin Sories, we all know at the beginning of the season, Caitlin Clark was the runaway favorite in Vegas to win the Rookie of the Year, and most Caitlin Clark fans and other WNBA fans may have agreed with that. But as it stands right now today, is Caitlin Clark still the Rookie of the Year in your eyes?
I'm honestly, bro, I'm so back and forth. I'm like Monica, bro. I've been looking at this stuff and going back and forth. You go first. You tell me what's on your mind, because I'm like, I don't even know where to start right now.
So it's important to me, and this is just the way that my twisted mind thinks. I think it's important that we acknowledge that the role that Angel Reese has on her team is not the same as the role that Caitlin has on her team. Right? You and I have talked about a lot this season about how Caitlin Clark's the only rookie in the WNBA this year that was drafted that's expected to be the number one option. And so as a result, if you're going to just compare numbers from a strictly number standpoint, we're talking about points per game and assists and all this stuff, Caitlin's going to have the edge because she's the number one option. She touches the ball more. What I would say, and why I would say that, in my opinion, I think Angel Reese is the rookie of the year right now, is what we've seen from these two is, in my opinion, I think we've seen Caitlin, it's gotten better over time, but we've seen Caitlin Clark have really good games. We've seen Caitlin Clark have some not so good games. If you just, and a lot of people have nitpicked like the fact that most of her offensive rebounds are her own misses, and the fact that her shooting percentage for a while was not, it was like 30% from she was shooting like 30% from the field or something to that effect.
Yeah, and she's still shooting under 40.
And she's still shooting under 40. Yeah, but Angel Reese, to me, has consistently played at the same level throughout the course of the season. There's certainly been some games where she's played above that level, like the 25-16 she had in that game against the Fever. And but like, to me, I think when I look at Angel Reese and I look at how she's played over the course of the season, and the fact that she now has, I think it's 10 straight double-doubles now, setting the record, and the fact that she's averaging a double-double, she's leading the league in rebounds per game as a rookie, like, I think those things matter, and I think that Angel Reese has just been more consistently good. Not to say that Caitlin Clark has not been good or great this season, but I think that Angel Reese more consistently has strung together a lot of really good games against a lot of tough competition, right? Like when you look at the games that they've played, when you talk about this double streak that she's on, like that includes let me pull up here. That includes a game against Minnesota. That includes a game against Vegas. That includes 2 games against the Fever. Like those matchups down low that Angel is getting these double-doubles in, specifically as it relates to rebounds, those are not easy matchups that she's facing down low, right? And so for me, like Caitlin Clark is the face of the draft. She's the star of the draft, and everyone, and she'll probably win the award anyway. But to me right now, I think that Angel Reese has played good games more consistently over a longer period of time than Caitlin Clark has. I think if this Rookie of the Year debate started June 1st or started like June 15th, I think Caitlin Clark's the Rookie of the Year if we just ignore the first 3 weeks of the season when she was still kind of filling it out a bit and had some duds consecutively. But if we're starting the season from the beginning of the season when it started to now, to me, Angel Reese is the Rookie of the Year. I think she's just been more consistently played at a good level better over the duration of the season.
Yeah, I just feel like it's way too close, man. I don't know.
I think totally close.
I think they've both, they're both breaking records. They're both, a lot. I think we're gonna have to see what their teams do. I think I don't know who's gonna win it. I can't say definitively that Caitlin's just gonna win it. I don't think that's true, bro. I think when you look at their record, we just saw where they are with their team records and stuff. That's gonna matter. I do think that based on across the board, I do think that right now it's Caitlin for me. Because I saw I think it was LaChina who said that she feels like it's Angel because she's exceeding expectations. And she's made such an improvement. Her points average has gone up like 3.5 points from May to June or whatever. And I mean, for me, like they're both basically meeting my expectations for the most part. So that's for me. I guess for the public, like maybe Angel is exceeding expectations a little bit. And the team is kind of not that they're doing anything crazy, but like they're competitive. They're in the playoff hunt. That's largely, due to Angel's presence. But I do think that Caitlin's role as the number one option as the point guard where the ball is in her hands majority of the time. Not to mention just how they're both navigating the league in their own ways. But I have to give Caitlin credit for like the stuff that's been, whether it's not even just like people being physical with her or whatever, like she has clearly had a hard time, like with the refs, with the physicality, with stuff like we've been watching her have a hard time. And despite that, she's still been really good. She's still averaging 16 points a game as a rookie on 12 shots per game. 8 of those 12 attempts per game are threes. So we're not even, and Christy Side said recently, they need her to take at least 15 shots a game. She's not even getting to 15 yet, like on a regular basis. Her assist numbers have been crazy, right? So like by far, she's the fastest player to get to 300 points, 100 rebounds, 100 assists, 19 games. That was like by far the fastest of any player. So like just her, when you look at the points, rebounds, assists, not to mention the last 6 games, she as a rookie, she's ranked in the top 20 in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. So, and it's not to say she's elite in all those categories, but she's ranking in the top 20 in all those. So yeah, I just think when you look across the board, obviously Caitlin, the scoring, you can kind of cancel it out in a way. Like I think Caitlin has been again, I think it probably cancels out. They've probably been about the same as far as like their effectiveness as a scorer, because Caitlin hasn't really tapped into like her strengths as a scorer yet. Neither really has Angel. They're both figuring that side out. So then it's like, do you value assists or rebounds more? People would like to say like we don't show up to just watch people rebound, but like Angel's rebounding is a dominant part of her game, and that's part. The assists, dominant part of Caitlin's game, right? She's leading the league in assists. So like it's like what should I value more? And again, I just think the combination of like the pressure, all the things, the usage, and Caitlin is still, she's still averaged over 15, 5, and 5 in May and June. That's only happened 4 times in WNBA history by a rookie, and she's done it twice in terms of a month, a rookie averaging 15, 5, and 5. 2 of the 4 times were her. She just did it in June and she did it in May. So I'm just like, yeah, she may not have been consistently good, but I mean, she's got a couple 30 balls. Her assist numbers are like astronomical. And I think across the board, and I will say that I do think Indiana is going to edge out Chicago. I do think we're getting ready to see a version of Indiana that is playoff worthy and that is a little scarier than what we've seen. I think we're seeing them get better, figure things out. Aaliyah Boston is coming into form a little bit more. And like I've said, they have a big 4. It's just probably the weirdest big 4 to have to figure out. Caitlin, Kelsey, Aaliyah, Nalissa, those are 4 highly talented basketball players. And not like just the perfect mesh. Like they're all kind of different positions, but like they can all do different things. And that's a real challenge there. So, but I do think we're starting to see it come into play where the best version of that, where we start to see moments of that. So I just think they're only going to get better. And obviously Caitlin's going to be a big part of that. So I do think right now for me, it's Caitlin. Like I said, I don't think I can really call it, but I do think that Indiana's going to get better. And that would lead to Caitlin winning.
I think the other difficult part as well.
What's up? I was trying to finish my thought. I didn't get to read that comment.
He said
right. Yeah.
They bring a positive back on the team. I agree. I think the tough thing for this is I feel like the cop out right now for a lot of people's answers is let's just see who makes the playoffs. But if you look at the standings, like the Fever are 8, the Sky are 9. None of the 3 teams below them are going to even maybe the Wings might have enough time to turn it around when Satu gets back, but I think it's too far gone from at this point. The team directly ahead of them that probably won't have a playoff spot by the time we get to the playoffs is the Atlanta Dream, because I don't know what's happening there, and I'm on record to say I have no idea what they're doing. So I don't even know if like whoever makes the playoffs is really going to be the thing, and it's difficult because again we're talking about 2 completely different I think styles and like the way in which things are happening. Like, and I agree with you. I certainly think that the Indiana Fever are starting to come to form. But I until I'm proven otherwise, I cannot forget that down the stretch of last season, kind of started around this time, and then as we got to All-Star break and then afterwards, Aaliyah Boston started to come into form, and they started to have tight games. And for some reason, we were just not getting the ball to Aaliyah Boston down the stretch of games to close out these games. And until I see a concerted effort to actually put the ball in the hands of whoever can give you the best opportunity to win the game, I don't even know 100% if I can say that the Fever are going to make the playoffs. I like to think that they would, because I think they have the talent. And to your point, that big four is a really weird one. When you compare it to other big threes and fours across the league, that setup is certainly a unique one. But I think it can work, and I think they're starting to figure it out. The major difference, I think, and this might be playing to the disadvantage of Angel in a way, is I feel like because everybody eats on Chicago, like one night it can be Dana, one night it can be Marina, one night it can be Kennedy Carter, one night it could be Angel. Like, I think because of the way that things are shaking out stylistically from a basketball sense in Chicago, because anyone can eat on any given night, I feel like that unintentionally is hurting Angel's case in a way, because we're expecting to see Caitlin eat every night, and 9 times out of 10 she does, especially recently, to your point, averaging 15, 5, and 5 2 consecutive months. So I don't even know, like, when it comes down to it, right? Let's say that Angel Reese keeps pace, and let's say she is averaging 15 and 10 or 15 and 12, whatever it is. I think she'll probably end up averaging 15 and 12 coming into the season, because she's on pace for that. With the way that her point per game production has improved. And Caitlin is still averaging 17, 5, and 5, whatever. Like, and their records are nearly identical. It's a one game difference. How do you decide who the rookie of the year is at this point? Because
if it's that close, they're going to get close. They'll give it.
They probably will, which is why I said not definitively, but if it's it sucks that this is the case, but I do believe, like, unless it's definitively Angel, like unless Angel just comes out of the gate after All-Star break and she's dropping 20 left and right, and now she's averaging 20 and 15 or whatever it is, and she's like clearly hit that stride, and Caitlin's just still doing the same thing they give. If it's a close race, it'll still go Caitlin. I just think that because their roles are different on their teams, inadvertently that's playing to the disadvantage of Angel Reese, because we're expecting, because of her usage, because of how much she has the ball in her hands, we're expecting Caitlin to go out there and get 20 and impact the game that way. And to your point that you've made several times over the course of the season, because of the demonstrative way in which she plays basketball, specifically when it comes to the deep 3-point shooting ability, the way that she plays basketball for new fans, for casual fans, for any fan, it feels more exciting, especially down the stretch of their games, because the Fever aren't blowing teams out, really. Like, a lot of their games are close losses or they're close wins. So when you see Caitlin hitting deep threes and winning the game for a team in that manner, compared to where Angel Reese, a lot of the way that she's impacting the game and winning these games, a lot more gritty. It's a lot more physical. It's not as showboaty and demonstrative. I think looking at how they've been playing, that also might hurt to her disadvantage. And again, it's not like on purpose, right? It's not like it's intentional this way, but I just think thinking about it from how they play basketball, where they're positioned on their teams, I do think that, unfortunately, even though I think it's Angel Reese right now, unless it's clear-cut obvious Angel Reese come season's end, I don't think she's going to win, just because of who Caitlin is, and she's the number one option on her team. And so she gets the first crack at everything 9 times out of 10. That's my one hesitation with this, is it's a back and forth thing. And I agree, it is certainly back and forth thing, go either way. But I do feel like unless it's clearly and obviously Angel Reese come season, then I do think it'll end up being Caitlin, just because it's Caitlin.
Yeah, but you make a good point though, because that should be an advantage for Angel, the fact that she doesn't have the ball in her hands as much. Everybody, they are in a system where everybody eats. They have 2-3 guards who are looking to get their shot off regularly on that team. And Angel is still getting her points. She's still she's still productive. She's still impacting the team. So I think that should and will play a factor, because an argument could be made that we should be expecting more from Caitlin. She should be scoring more. She should be averaging 20 if the ball's in her hands that much. Again, she should be taking more shots. Yeah. And she's getting the most blitzes, as if you heard Monica in that clip. I mean, I didn't need Michael Vopel to tell me that. I every favorite game I watch, and I said this too. I've been saying this to people about the whole respect thing, like players respecting Caitlin or whatever. Like, and I never saw anyone mention this. Like, from game one of her rookie career, they were picking her up full court. They didn't wait for her to show them who she was. They respected her as the Iowa version of Caitlin Clark from day one. They did not play around with her. They didn't test her. They didn't say, show us who you are. You got to prove it to us. They didn't just pick her up at half and like close out hard at the three. They've been picking her up full court, not just to like bully her or to rookie haze her, but out of respect for her game, knowing what she does and knowing her gravity. So, like, again, it's really interesting. Like, they're two very different situations. I think, I think Caitlin has had just a different, her navigation of this is different as a guard and as the kind of guard that she is. Angel has had to navigate on the inside where it's big, it's physical, it's rough. Like, it's hard to be the kind of prolific flame-throwing guard that Caitlin was in college. It's hard to be that in the WNBA, and it's hard to come into the WNBA and play flat-out bully ball the way Angel is used to doing. So they have such different adjustments to make, and I think we're seeing them both adjust like really well, and do other things to affect winning besides like what we just know them for. Like, they're all doing, different things to impact winning. But yeah, I think that should be noted as like, even like you talk about Aaliyah on Indiana, Angel, I don't see them get, looking for Angel even as much as they could. Angel and Camilla, like they don't just play through them necessarily, right? They have again, Marina Mabry, Dana Evans, Kennedy Carter, those guards are looking to get their shots off too. And they have to for that offense. So, yeah, I do think, like, obviously Caitlin is the focal point for Indiana, but it's like, again, I go back and forth because that's where maybe we should give Caitlin more credit because she is taking on more of the responsibility, more of the usage. She is a point guard. She has to be the scorer, the 3-point threat, the point guard. Like, she has a lot of responsibility right away, and she's done a pretty good job with it. So I think, I think you make a good point, because if Caitlin is going to keep doing what she's doing, and she gets even a little bit better, it's most likely going to her unless Angel really goes to another level.
And I definitely think Angel has it in her to go to that next level. I mean, like, to your point here, like the increase from her point per game production from May to June was like 3.5 points, which is why I don't think it's like complete out of her own possibility because I think she's averaging 13 and 11 right now. So like, I think, which is again why I say, like, if Angel come seasons in is averaging 15 and 12, averaging 17 and 12, whatever it is, like, I think that makes it a little bit more interesting. I just think because of who Caitlin is, who Caitlin's expected to be, and to your point, because she's the number one option with all the weight on her shoulders as far as being the passer and the scorer and the 3-point threat, and she's doing great rebounding as well. Unless it's clearly and obviously like Angel Reese is averaging, like I said, 20 and 15, and she's really, really like locking it down with the role that she has. I don't think Angel will win. Not to say that she can't if it's a close race. We see these things happen all the time where there's one player that everyone knows, like, as soon as, like, number one overall pick, yeah, it's going to be that person. And then it takes Herculean effort from someone that's not the number one pick to be the rookie of the year, even if it ends up being a close race come season. And so, but I think both these girls are playing great. And the one thing I will point out as well is this is the worst they're going to be in their career, which brings me a lot of joy as well. Like, what we're seeing from them this season, as crazy as it is with the Caitlin setting records and Angel setting records now, like, this is the worst they're going to be in their basketball careers. It's in their professional basketball careers. It's not going to get any worse than this. And if this is the worst, number one, that means that there's greater things to come throughout the course of this season. Also, there's greater thing that comes for years and years ahead. And I love that because they're two really good basketball players.
And isn't it just crazy how, like, it just keeps coming back to Caitlin and Angel?
It's always
no matter what. Like,
it's always going to come back to Caitlin.
It's real crazy.
Quick, actually, on that point, because I think it was after their last game, or maybe it was their second to last game that they had against each other, because they had them like 2 games, like a week. Caitlyn was like, she felt like the only people that thought that Caitlyn Angel thing was a rivalry was the media. Like, do you view this as a rivalry? And if you don't, do you think it should be pushed as a rivalry? Because I personally don't think this is a rivalry between Caitlyn and Angel necessarily, but I do think I think from a marketing standpoint, it is smart to position it as a rivalry between the Fever and the Sky because they're two young teams with similar aspirations. Like, I don't think there is a Caitlin Clark Angel Reese rivalry necessarily.
No, I think like the media and like fans and the media and the public can manufacture a rivalry, and that national championship and that moment created we made it a rivalry. We made it a rivalry. So it's not a rivalry between them. Like Magic and Bird, like that whole comparison that's been happening. We talked about it when it first came up, when I think we reacted to Magic himself when he was commenting on that dynamic, and we talked about it here on the show. That was months ago. Magic and Bird became friends. They weren't like friends really at first, but they had a respect for each other, and they were kind of just intertwined. And then there was like, I remember the story, like there was a commercial they did together that ended up being the first time they were like together and got to talk to each other and find out how much they had in common. Yeah. Caitlyn and Angel already know each other. Unless someone puts them in a commercial together and tries to create a bond, they're not like, and people go at Angel acting like she brings up Caitlyn because she hates her, or, you know, like, no, it's just because like we have created this rivalry. It's us. Like, they don't have a rivalry with each other. They don't play the same position. Their teams are kind of becoming rivals now because they're in the Midwest and because of like the Caitlyn and Angel thing. But no, there's not. It's a totally fan media created rivalry, which is good, which is a good thing for the sport, and even for them, it's got to be a little annoying. Again, that's why, like, when I say like Angel, when she brings up Caitlyn and stuff or mentions stuff, it's like, I don't see it as her doing it, you know, to like, because she's jealous or to like go at Caitlyn. Like, there's no back and forth. Anytime they talk about each other, it's all love and respect. And even there could still be a rivalry, even if there is love and respect, because even after Magic and Bird became friends and built on their love and respect, the rivalry was still there. Because again, there's other factors that contribute: Lakers, Celtics, black, white, you know, like, so it just has kind of naturally become that rivalry. And like I said, it's a good thing. It's good. It's got to be a little annoying for them, but it's a good thing.
That, I was gonna say, man, that first Angel Caitlyn playoff series is gonna hit like crack in the 80s. I'll tell you that much. That's for sure. And maybe they can get to the finals against each other before the WNBA finally decides to split these conferences up and have conference championships, which I think will probably come after we get to 16, because there'll be enough teams for that. But yeah, I don't think it's a rivalry. I do like your point about them not playing the same position, because I think we kind of had, this is like a similar topic of conversation with LeBron and Steph after the 2016 finals. Like, is this a rivalry? And it's kind of like,
yeah. Like,
yeah, like they played back-to-back finals. The teams, the Cavs and the Warriors. But even now, like, you think about it now, like, are LeBron and Steph, even after that,
right?
I would say that LeBron and Steph are rivals. I think there's
the Cavs and Warriors are no longer rivals. When you have a rivalry, like Yankees Red Sox rivalry, right, you know, Duke North Carolina rivalry, like a real rivalry.
It transcends players and it transcends moments. Like,
it's
Magic
timeless.
and Bird were rivalries because of all the things you mentioned, also because they played for Lakers and Celtics. The Lakers and the Celtics are still rivals. Like that. That's still the point. And because the Celtics just won a championship, that's only going to add more fuel to that, right? So I think if you want to say that they're forever connected because of the moment that we got in the national championship, I think that's perfectly fine, because they are forever connected. That, in fact, every time they have their next meaningful matchup, we're going to see that clip, right? When they have their first playoff series against each other, that clip's going to come up, right? If together, they end up matching up in the final together, that clip's going to come up, right? When they both get inducted into the Hall of Fame eventually, that clip's like that clip's going to come up forever. It's always there, but I don't think Caitlyn and Angel themselves are the rivals, but I do think it is smart from a marketing standpoint to try to paint a rivalry between the Fever and the Sky, just for a couple reasons. The big one is the best thing about rivalries is you're typically rivaling with a team that's not that far from you. The Sky and the Fever, not that far from each other geographically. So you can actually get the feel of a rivalry game because fans can go to the other arenas. So I think that's important. But like, I mean, it's not, I think in order to be a rival with someone, it has to be someone that you're consistently matching up against, like at your position. Like Brady and Manning, that was a rivalry.
Yeah,
and then like even then it really wasn't because of just how crazy Brady was in the postseason compared to Manning. But like it takes things like that to actually have that rivalry.
When Yao Ming came to the NBA, automatically he was Shaq's rival. Because Shaq's the top dog big man in the league, and they're talking about this guy's the new best big man right away. Automatically, they're rivals. They've got to be rivals, right? So even when I saw like photos and clips and stuff from Angel and Asia's matchup, like even just aesthetically, that has me more excited as like not that that's gonna be a rivalry, but just being able to see, our queen top player in the league right now against the young buck, both lefties, right? Asia has mastered the shooting touch where the one area that Angel really needs to come up in, so like even just seeing the photos of them together, they're the same height, they're both decent looking, like it's just nice to see like the contrast of two players who play the same position, it's just, like that again, not to paint that as that may never be a rivalry, but just when you look at matchups and contrasts as potential rivalries, or just like, like you use the right word. Angel and Caitlyn are connected forever. We talked about that. I mean, they're gonna be connected forever. The teams that they went to just added to all this, and then even the Kennedy Carter hip check thing, so like things have been adding to the Sky Fever rivalry component, again starting with Caitlyn and Angel, but it's only going to keep building. They're going to be connected, and their teams are going to be rivals because of them.
I think real quick, I do think Asia at this point, she's getting to a point where her rivals aren't playing basketball anymore. That's where she's at this point, honestly. I think a couple years ago, if Angel was in the league a couple years ago, that can certainly be a rivalry because of all the things you mentioned. Right now, I think it's just a bit too late. I
think Stewie is kind of her rival right now. Stewie's
her rival right now.
Rival.
If Asia keeps this up, she'll be rivaling with like all-time greats. Sure. But I will say this though, and not only because Mike Hughes in the comments here, if Angel and Camilla were not on the same team, that would be the rivalry because it would just spew over from LSU, South Carolina, all that good stuff. Gotta love the SEC, man. Gotta love the SEC.
I mean, it would depend on what teams. It still depend on the teams.
That's fair. I do think that the three matchups that they had last season would, regardless of the team, I think certainly add to it just a bit because they did see each other 3 times last year, and they were great matchups every single time.
I mean, college-wise is one thing.
That's a good point. College is definitely a different thing. Yeah.
I love them on the same team though. That's dope.
It's great. I think they're going to win a championship together real soon, I would say, in the next 5 years. It's always a pleasure talking women's basketball with my guy, Martin Sories. To everyone that tuned in with us and tapped in with us live, we appreciate it. To everyone that's going to tap in with us later on, we appreciate it. And for all you guys that are only tapped in on Instagram via the clips, we appreciate you guys as well. But come watch the show long form. You'll love it even more. Give us a like, subscribe, comment, and don't forget about the Give Us a Shot Network and all of its great content across the network. You got Protect Our Queens, the Shot Get Podcast, Pack the Punch, Talk About Sports, the Divide Live, High Spot Podcast, and the debut of several new network shows, all NBA, all MLB, and things of that nature. So, as always, Please, 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 if you do not follow us on Instagram, please go over and do that at @ProtectOurQueens_. You can find all of our content there, from short form clips from the show to just other content about women's basketball, as well as Martin Sori said at the beginning of the show, if you don't like women's basketball, this is not the place for you. So for my guy, Martin Sori, this is Marcus of the Protect Our Queens podcast signing off. Thank you guys for watching. And as always, you guys enjoy yourselves some women's basketball.